how are you going to incorporate them and not make them the cast-off redheaded stepchildren? Remember when a character would go into vertigo, like Green Arrow. Okay, Green Arrow is in a mature themes book with the swears and the nudity and the extreme violence, so he can't be in the Justice League.
Yeah.
He's in the mature book. Well, that means that he doesn't have that wide, all ages audience anymore. He has the more limited, restricted, mature audience. So if you want these sales to equal the sales of a wide book, you got to find some way to make that many more people read it.
Okay.
You run the risk of making the characters in this instance too restricted by not making them accessible broadly. I think the idea when blending the New 52 was that everything would be equally accessible. The Grifter and Voodoo and Midnighter and Apollo, all the Wildstorm characters, all the Vertigo characters. Swamp Thing is now a regular New 52 book. Animal Man is now a regular New 52 book, with the hope being that they would sell just as well as any other regular New 52 book.
That worked out well.
Well, it didn't, but simultaneously, the effort was made to not kidify them just because they're part of the New 52. Animal Man might not have been a mature themes book, but it wasn't a kid book. Batman, Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, wasn't a kid's book, but it was regular main New 52. It wasn't a mature book.
Yeah.
So there is that medium road where you aim to a higher reading group, an older audience, but you make it as accessible as anything else. New 52 Batman Snyder Capullo was accessible to anybody reading the Justice League. Justice League wasn't as edgy, perhaps, but still, there's that even terror. This Batman is part of this super team. You don't feel like they're two separate things, and you're conditioned to not track back and forth. Make sense? Let me have that box, Nick.
You got it.
We still disagree on the have to be if a character is in Vertigo, then they have to be in Vertigo, and then there's walled off.
That's an editorial decision. So whether you
understand.
like it or not, the editors decide. If you're in a Vertigo book, you can't be. It's like
the
Killing
editors
Joke
can decide that, but do
Right.
they have to? No.
Well,
And that's my assertion.
it's the same way they did with the Killing Joke. We're not going to take the mature events of the Killing Joke, the naked pictures of Barbara Gordon shot through the spine. We're not mentioning that in the Comic Code approved Batman. One, we can't.
But
Until they made it canon.
It was always canon.
Yeah.
It's just that the Killing Joke was not code approved.
Well,
and Batman
originally
was.
it was actually not meant. Alan Moore originally, he said he never thought it would be canon. He didn't want it to be canon, and if he had originally thought it was going to be canon, he would have done the story completely different.
Well, but it didn't take DC long to start working paralyzed Barbara Gordon into their stories, and then paralyzed Barbara Gordon became Oracle.
Yeah.
So something good came out of it.
Oh, yeah.
But, again, editorially, like it or not, the same Green Arrow, that Mike Grell was telling stories with
In
might
the 80s.
have... Yeah, he might have been the Green Arrow that used to be in the Justice League, but the Comics Code Authority makes his shooting a broad blade arrow through a guy's skull not something that we can talk about in the code-approved Justice League.
Yeah.
So the separation is real.
Did we get rid of that? I thought we did.
the code.
He died. Yeah,
No,
the code is gone.
The code is
but
thankfully,
now the code is replaced with the E for everyone,
Oh,
T for teen.
So basically, they
M
did the
for mature.
ESRB rating for basically how they do video
Yes,
games.
and
Yeah,
so
similar,
they,
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
DC polices itself with this,
Which is fine,
you know,
yeah.
or Marvel too. Everybody does.
Everyone does,
Everybody does, and that's great. However, once you graduate this character to M for mature, it does kind of mean that he can't be in the A for all ages
I
or E for
disagree.
everybody.
I disagree.
If it's M for mature because of language,
Well, you gotta
excessive
think-
violence,
you gotta think
then
of,
that
like-
content makes it not possible.
I don't know, because you got to think of like John Constantine. He was in Justice League Dark, which even did a crossover with Justice League and Justice League of America, but he is basically Hellblazer is an M book. That's the thing.
Well, if you've already gone against what you're saying here, Troy, because if you have like a Killing Joke and you have Barbara Gordon in something where no, we can't show this to everyone. but the consequences of those
of the
events
story has already
goes over and becomes canon.
referenced.
So
and
yes, you can have those.
Well,
I can have that character
what happened-
in the mature book, and I can have that character in the all ages book.
Well, what happened was that one, Killing Joke was a one-shot, not a continuing series. Green
Yes.
Arrow was a
Eve doesn't
continuing
matter.
Series.
Same thing.
Well, two, the consequences. Yeah, Barbara's in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well, how did that happen? There
Well,
is
she would-
no.
Yeah, but they say why.
Well, they do
do
make
say
reference
why.
of it.
They
They
make-
still say, "Oh yeah, the Joker shot her." You know, they still say, "Yes, she was."
They're just not going to give you the
But-
dirty pictures.
Exactly.
Well,
yeah,
and-
they're not
and
going to
go back and look at the footnotes. The footnotes are not clear as to where this happened. People who were reading Batman and didn't read the Killing Joke, all of the
All of a sudden
14-year-old kids who were getting Batman off the shelf every month,
don't
whomever was doing
realize
it.
what happened
And
to
it's
Barbara
like,
Gordon.
oh, what happened to Barbara Gordon? What's all that about? Oh, yeah, that happened in the Killing Joke, kid. Come back in 2 years when you can buy that book. There's a disconnect that happens because what actually contextually happened in the story isn't available to that audience.
But a good writer artist team can tell that event in 2 or 3 panels of ready for all ages, well, ready for teen at least, and then move right along.
Right. Well, now that's teen, but what if it's not T for teen? What if it is E for everyone?
If it's E for everyone, you're not going to tell the story, but Barbara,
But you can still make
Oracle
reference
is,
to it.
But
You can
Oracle
still make reference to
is
it. Yeah.
is still
Which they've
going to be,
done
and
before.
it might be way more vague. Like, oh, she was injured long ago by an enemy, and they're not going to say Joker shot her because that's a little too rough for a little kid. But she was injured long ago. Fine, moving right along.
Right.
And they
Now-
can say that in the cartoony version.
Sure. Now, here's the key, and for me, this is a critical difference. I think there's a huge difference between telling the story, which to me implies telling the whole damn thing, versus encapsulating it in a sanitized version in a few panels. That's not the whole story.
Well,
And
Well,
the
what
whole
about-
story,
so
and see, and again, bear with me,
Yeah.
contextually. The whole story of the matured Green Arrow is older Oliver and a crisis of conscience and a moral gray area doing morally gray things. Ongoing, not just once, not just in one short miniseries, but into perpetuity of the Green Arrow series. And as long as Oliver is not adhering to the moral code of what makes the Justice League a younger reading book. Not a kid's book, but, a code-approved book.
So what do you?
So there, because there was always a separation of those anti-hero characters. Jonah Hex, when he became Vertigo.
Yeah.
And, and when the level of violence in Jonah Hex ramped way up, there is a difference between code-approved Jonah Hex in Weird Western Tales and Vertigo Jonah Hex.
Yeah.
There's, yeah, sure, Jonah swears, but we're not going to put the swears in the book. But there's more to it than just the swears.
Swearing,
There's
yeah.
more to it than
There's the
just
gun
naked
violence.
breasts.
Yeah, there's all
and,
that.
and again, the comics code stipulated the morality of a character, a limit as to what the character could and could not do. And that morality was heavily crossed over when Green Arrow became a Vertigo character. Constantine, likewise. I mean, why do you think you rarely saw Constantine
In the DC
not
universe.
in something else? He was in other places,
Yeah.
sure. But the more that DC locked down on, okay, smoking is bad, we don't want to show people smoking, you stopped seeing Constantine make a lot of other appearances anywhere else.
Yeah.
And he was in Hellblazer and Swamp Thing,
And
but mostly
Sandman.
Hellblazer.
Yeah.
Sandman occasionally, etc. It's a little broader now. Again, the A for everyone. A for all ages.
They've
E
gotten
for
more
everyone,
lenient now and everything.
Teen plus. There's a little more leeway, but it still serves the same purpose as the comic code, and so you have characters still not crossing some of those morally gray areas that they might otherwise.
Yeah, but you
in
still
an
get.
M4 mature book.
But it still raises the question, like Death in the Family. Wasn't that in a code-approved book? But
Death of the Family was a code-approved book.
So
it
it's
showed
the actual
Joker in his
beating-
psychoticness doing what the villain does.
Yeah.
The villain ultimately gets defeated.
Yes.
not necessarily in the pages of that book, but ultimately, and that was a thing. The villains always had to lose.
But he still won at the end. Batman didn't at the end or halfway through the book at like the third or fourth issue. Jason Todd still gets blown to shit.
Yes, he still dies. Yes, the Joker still kills him.
Yes,
but ultimately, Batman defeats the Joker, and the Joker ends up in Arkham. That is the wash, rinse, repeat cycle.
Yes.
So, at some point in this book, if this book is going to be approved by the Comic Code, the Joker is going to lose. We could show that sometimes the criminal gets one up, but he doesn't stay up. And that was the nature of the Beast at the time. The Beast has modified somewhat since then, but there's still some degree of sensitivity. It's much, much easier to cleanly separate and to keep a character from bleeding over, because then one writer feels constrained and wants to do things that they can't do. It's so much easier to just not have to put those constraints on a writer.
Okay. I mean, obviously, editorial teams can do what they want and, make the decisions that they want. I'm just, my argument, and I hope that your fans will go and chime in on this, is that, I feel like you don't have to do it that. Sure, that's one way to do it, and that makes it very clean and compartmentalized. Mm-hmm. And, unarguably, yes, it certainly would. It certainly does in those cases where that's the case. But I don't think you have to, and to my preference, I prefer to have, your Constantine, your Hellblazer in a true Vertigo book, and I want it to be nasty and dirty, and I want him to be able to come over and guest in a Justice League, or have him be in a metal, right? Yeah. Something like that, where you've got all these, all this crazy stuff going on. When you need a magic type person, and it's not on the cosmic level of the Spectre or whatever. Hey, then Constantine is the guy that you try to go to, and then and he comes with some cool complications, writing wise, where he's sure he'll do it for you, but you're gonna owe him, type of thing. And you probably don't want to owe, Constantine, because he is one of those gray area heroes. Very, he's a little darker than most gray area heroes.
Oh yeah.
Much like a Punisher would be in Marvel, where, sure he's he's killing bad guys, but he is using gun violence to kill the bad guys whenever he can, and without remorse, and so. My point is...
well, see, the other difference, though, is you are, and have been for a significant length of time, a mature reader. You're thinking of what you want for a story that you would enjoy. You're not thinking like...
Aren't we all?
Well, I'm thinking to myself, in many respects, not just as a retailer, but, at a point in time when I was, parenting and I had to be concerned, I wouldn't want the morality of Mike Grell's Green Arrow to be influencing my 10-year-old, who might also be reading the Justice League.
Yeah.
And I also don't think that I, as a mature reader, would enjoy every time Green Arrow decides, you know what, I'm tired of Prometheus, I'll put an arrow through his eye, and Batman catches the arrow and goes, we don't do that. Which serves the morality of the code, but it means that Green Arrow, the Green Arrow that you like, as Mike Grell wrote him, never gets to do that in the Justice League because you're not allowed to tell that type of story here. So you end up not getting the character that you do like. You still end up with a disconnect.
I'll tell you in one way that I do appreciate your approach, and that is to say, with my daughter coming to me and saying, hey, I want to be Harley Quinn for Halloween, and I'm like, Harley Quinn? That sounds terrible. Now, obviously, in Batman the animated series, and obviously in even more so when it comes to like DC's Gotham Girls or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Not Gotham Girls,
or,
but the
Bombshells.
No, the animated series where they're in high school.
Oh,
it's like DC
Gotham,
High School.
It's like
superhero girls.
Yeah,
superhero girls.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Are they high school or junior high?
I don't know.
They're one or the other. They're young though.
Yeah.
Right, and Harley Quinn is among them, and so this is my daughter's knowledge of Harley Quinn. Just, oh, she's got a cool costume, and she's goofy and whatever. Not, and this is that character that she's interested in. But, me as a father, I'm looking at it as, oh God, here's this character, who has this terrible victim relationship with Joker. I don't want my daughter to ever be victimized by a love relationship. That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
That's the last thing that I would ever want, for my kid. But here those are drastically different characters. You've got your DC, you've got your regular version, your current comic book version that has had all these awful things happen to her. And then you've got your, superhero girls where everything's light and they're just in high school and everything's safe. And so I think those two things can exist together, but there is some amount of reluctance on my part to appreciate little kids saying, I want to be this villain, because I'm not into villains. Well, I don't want my kids to emulate villains.
Perfect example of moral gray hero, Speedy.
Okay.
Snowbirds don't fly.
Okay.
You find out he's a heroin addict, and that did not have the comics approved code.
No, it did not, because at the
but
time,
he still showed up, and they still made reference to it in the later Teen Titans.
Because
in the 80s.
what happened afterwards was the code rewrote itself and decided that, okay, Speedy did what we want. He used drugs, and there were negative consequences, and that reinforces to kids the drugs are bad.
Yeah.
Same thing with Stan Lee and the Green Goblin and the Harry Osborn.
Yeah.
Which didn't have the code.
Nope.
The stories were referred to, but that's also in part because the code rewrote itself. Code wasn't going to rewrite Green Arrow putting an arrow through somebody's eye. That wasn't going to happen. The code wasn't going to allow Green Arrow and Black Canary to be half naked in bed together. Literally, softcore porn.
Yeah.
Silhouette. And I'm not
silhouette sexuality.
Because
over
Nightwing and Starfire were obviously
in bed together,
or in a somewhat state of undress in the same sleeping arrangements, but it was much less overt.
Okay.